saw you for a second.
Oh, here.
There we go.
I'm sorry I'm a little bit delayed. Zoom made me update.
No worries.
Oh,
Yeah, I've been messing around with Zoom for about a year, and then every once in a while, if I don't jump on early and make sure everything's running, I'll try to get on and it won't work, and then I'll be trying. I'll get no video.
Yeah, I thought my timing would be impeccable, and then it was just like, please update. And I'm like, oh man.
I did that with what was it, Paul Carrick, and I was like, oh, I'm not gonna have the video of this, and I was like, oh,
Yeah. No, and there's that moment, and then you get the spinning wheel, and then there's that moment of, oh, for God's sake.
or even just the like, I'm talking like I am to you, and then I go hit record, and it goes only the host can record. I go, I am.
Oh no,
Yeah. I was like,
no.
what is going on here?
So you've got a pretty cool office.
Yeah, I hang a lot of crap up.
Yeah.
People think it's a fake background, but
No.
it's the real deal.
Yeah, no, I was reading your bio, so I see that you've interviewed a lot of really cool people and had a lot of.
I've taken advantage of the pandemic.
Oh, you mean you had easier access to people because of the pandemic?
Well, they were more willing online just because everybody was doing this for that first 18
Yeah,
months, right? So a
right.
lot of that, and then some of the habits die hard, and some of them are still doing it, so it's good. And,
So
reach
you can hear me?
as you know, it's good for getting the public interviews. It's good just for reaching out for collaboration too.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay, or do you want me to put on headphones?
No, I'm good on my end for sure.
Okay, good.
Well, we'll jump right into the film, and then we'll get into a little bit more about you. Are you on any kind of real timeline or anything like that? As
No.
far as okay, I know the program will probably kick us off at about 40 minutes, but if we're still going hot and heavy, we can just reload again. That's no problem.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll just click on the same link and we can go into the same room. And
Oh, that's cool.
I don't know why the 40-minute limit's there, but
Uh,
how does Brotherhood come to you as a story? Is it something that was somewhat formed before you get on board, so to speak, as a vehicle, or is it something that you have shepherded from a blank page?
wow, shepherd is such a great word. I've never actually thought of myself as being the shepherd of Brotherhood, but I like that. It's meaningful and it's very in keeping, I guess, with with like the spiritual aspects of the movie. It is about the Brotherhood of St. Andrew. But yeah, I've been many things. I usually start off by saying that I was the treasure hunter. So I'd say treasure hunter before shepherd, because I found out about this story in 2006 when the 80th anniversary happened for it. And there was just a small mass at a church in Kirkfield to honor the boys. But it did feel like uncovering buried treasure because I thought the story was so dynamic and so interesting and so moving. But then I did go into shepherd mode in the sense that it took me a very long time to court producers and convince them that it was going to be a good idea for a motion picture and also just raise the financing. And it's just very interesting because there's a saying in North American film where we say making your first film is easy, but making your second film is hard. And I made my first picture, it came out in 2006, a movie called 18. And my second movie, it was like another 12 or 13 years before I was on a film set again. So uh, that parable feels true. But yeah, no, I've been a part of it every step of the way, from the genesis in the very early days to even now, promoting it and getting it
Yeah.
out there and getting it in front of audiences.
So what made you, or not made you, I guess, made it? And again, this may not be exclusive to this story because stories are attractive for many different reasons. But when you first heard that kernel, what made you think this is a motion picture as opposed to, well, that's a nice story, but X, Y, Z,
Well,
not
it just had
a motion
it had
picture.
all the elements of a great
Yeah.
movie, and uh, and that's what I felt when I read this tiny newspaper article about it. It had everything in it um, that we go to see the movies for, which
Yeah.
is, I think, we go to see tales of heroism. We go to see tales where there's a ticking time clock, so the stakes are really high.
Yep.
Obviously, these boys clinging to a canoe over the course of an evening, there is very much a ticking time clock, and them trying to survive the night, holding on for dear life. And I think that we go to the movies to see stories of adventure and peril, and true stories are always very seductive, I think. And I think when we're sitting in a darkened theater or even on the couch watching Netflix, I think there is a moment in our humanity when we look, think to ourselves, oh, could I do that?
Right.
Or could I pull that off? And whether you're watching like 127 hours and you think, oh, could I cut off my own arm to
Yep.
survive? Or whatever it is. The opportunity with seeing a movie is almost like voyeuristic, or thinking, could I do that? Could I pull that off? Or
Yeah.
if I was in that scenario or in that situation, would I comport myself with as much dignity? So
Sure. So, I mean, again, many people, as it's not just the old, I hate to say, the old Hollywood studio system where the writer's one person, the director's another, and never shall the twain or departments even meet. You're wearing many hats here. You've obviously, as you say, you've made film before, so this isn't the first kick at the can, so to speak. But talk to me about the difference between writing it, directing it, and then telling that story the third time when you're in the edit booth going, oh, well, it doesn't even, I can ignore this hack writer, even though it is the same person. And even the director, and go, well, I can tell a different story here now that I've got all the pieces. And it is a big train set, I've been known to say. But how is that process to you different and fulfilling, or less fulfilling if it's not your favorite part of it?
I love your questions. They're so good, and they're so refreshing, and they're so different from like the usual questions that I get when I'm doing like an audience Q&A. So I appreciate that.
Oh, good.
As the writer, being a writer might be my least favorite thing because it's the most solitary, and it feels like going to the gym. Like when you go to the gym and you're finished, you feel really good and you have that endorphin rush, and that's what it's like with writing. But the thought of doing the writing, or slogging to the gym, or slogging to the laptop,
Yep.
and turning off all distraction, that's harder. And I think it's harder or more challenging because it's just so solitary and there's no one to bounce off.
Sure.
So directing was a lot more fun because definitely, like, directing on set was a lot more fun because it's like a whole army shows up and there's so many, there's an excitement and there's a crackle in the air and there's an esprit de corps that we're all, going towards this one goal to like get our days. And also, it's such a pure pleasure working with actors. It's my favorite part of the whole process. Being a writer on Brotherhood was a really good thing, because we had to shoot so quickly on location, and because we were chasing weather and chasing lake conditions, and just with a film that doesn't have a huge Hollywood budget, there were so many obstacles in my way that came up through the day, and so many challenges. So being the writer was very handy because I knew the script so well, I could pivot really easily.
Sure.
And when I was on set on Brotherhood, particularly when we were doing the location work, I was pivoting every 20 minutes,
Okay.
having to change something from the script. And I could do it with rapidity, and I think with some sophistication, because I had just spent so long writing the
Right.
picture.
For sure.
Um, and I had a really good DP, Adam Suika, and a really great first AD, Paco, and we were able to just all the time, it just like a Tetris piece as it falls. It's a
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and just try
And
and
get
get
it.
it
Yeah.
right.
And get it where it's going to go. Yeah.
Yeah. And then editing was really great, although it was so different because I really missed everybody from the set, and particularly I missed the actors. So I found that when I was editing with Sarah Petty, quite often I would text or phone one of the actors from the picture just to let them know how things were going because I missed them so much.
Right.
But editing was really exciting because it's taking the footage and doing it all kind of like in a new way, and because Brotherhood sort of ping pongs between time periods, there's a
Yep.
lot of room for play, like where do things go. And again, I guess I'm using a Tetris metaphor or allegory, but it's just like it's like that. And working with Sarah was really great because she wasn't on set, and it was really
Okay.
great to see the movie through someone's eyes who wasn't on set, who did not know
Right.
all the ancillary things that were going on. because as a filmmaker, as a director, I take all that stuff in with me and I say, oh, that's not right because A, B, C, and D. And my editor was like, oh, I wouldn't know that because, or like, I'd be like, oh, they're paddling in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
because
yeah,
I
yeah,
wasn't on set, she was like, no one knows that they're not,
yeah,
paddling in the right direction, like as opposed to what you saw on the day.
yeah.
And it was exciting working with an editor. Quentin Tarantino has, I think, worked with the same editor for a really long time, and he particularly or specifically likes to work with a female editor because he
Yeah.
thinks there's a lot of value in that. And when you're a man working with a woman about a story that's so male, like in Quentin Tarantino's case, obviously his movies skew male, like or what
Yeah.
we might consider male because of the violence and the carnage and the cursing. But Brotherhood is such an, by its title, it's an inherently male or masculine story.
For sure.
So having a female eye on it, I thought was really important. And I must say this about Sarah. She prevented me from making some horrible mistakes
Okay.
because I was actually kind of savage with this script at that point, or savage with the cut, and just said, "Oh, get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this." And she sort of defended my work
Okay.
as a director, and she defended my work as a screenwriter, saying, "Well, if you cut out this, you're going to lose this, 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 and all this will topple."
Okay.
So three very different experiences. My favorite aspect was probably production, just because of the amount of people I got to work with.
And since you kind of underline it as your favorite, how are you as a director? Do you like to do a lot of rehearsals before you start rolling camera? And do you like to shoot with a lot of cameras if you can afford it? Or
Yeah.
and are you, are you right beside the camera? Or are you more laid back? And if there was a video village, you'd be hanging out there, kind of thing. Or are you right there, like just off, like Tarantino, just off the shot?
Well, how low budget do you think we were? Of course, of course
Well,
we
no,
had a video. Well, we had a video village. No, I
yeah.
get
Some
it.
people just
The
don't do it now,
production.
or it's an iPad, right? It's
Well, yeah, no, that's
yeah.
that's very true. It could have been an iPad. We had a video village that I was ensconced in with my DP,
Nice.
and we had two cameras on
Okay.
Brotherhood. Like, there's no way that we could have shot that film without two cameras. And it was a great pleasure to work with two cameras. And many times, particularly when we were doing the water stuff at night, I would go up to the actors and I'd say, pretend you're doing a play, because I want you to be in character the entire time because we have
Okay.
two cameras. And sometimes the cameras are just hosing everything down, right?
Sure.
And you're just kind of hoping for happy accidents. That's also the great thing about location work is that there's so many happy accidents that happen
Mhm.
that when I'm in the editing bay, I see things that I never saw on the day when we were shooting because I was so frazzled or whatever. Um, so yes, definitely two cameras. There's no way we could have made this picture without two of them. And Video Village, yeah, I feel like Video Village is a great space to be because it feels. I don't want to sound I don't want to sound mystical or,
Right.
but it does feel like a little bit of a sacred space.
Sure. Yeah.
Although that expression is the screenwriter and me wants to rewrite it already because it sounds too ridiculous. But it is a good place to work, and I'm like right up against the monitor because I really do care what's happening in
Sure.
this,
Yeah.
right? And being with my DP was great. As far as rehearsals go, I'm like a drama school brat, so I went
Great.
to Studio 58, which is the theater program at Langara College, and I was there from 1995 to 1998. I never acted again after I graduated from drama school. In fact, going to drama school sort of convinced me that I was the worst actor out there. But I am grateful for the experience because it
Right.
taught me, I think, to be a real actor's director. And I've seen in some of the EPK videos where the young actors are being interviewed, and that seemed to be a word that came up a lot, which is actor's director. I'm
Well,
not particularly I'm not a particularly technical director, but that's why I had someone like Adam Suika, who is is decades older than me. Not to make him sound super old,
right.
but
Yeah.
it was like a nice kind of like, I don't know, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke Skywalker dynamic. Although I'm not that young, but
Yeah.
it,
As you compare him to Alec Guinness, it's good. He's not.
It was a perfect union, I think, because he had a lot more experience than me shooting motion pictures, and he had the technical know-how, particularly with the water stuff, which is
Okay.
all be problematic or challenging. But he had the know-how and dare I say, like the wizardry, to be able to figure all that stuff out. Whereas a lot of time, I really focused on the actors.
So, I mean, did I read this right that Ian McKellen's involved in this in some way?
No, Ian McKellen was in my first film.
So
So
how does that happen? Just to break the Brotherhood chat for a second.
yeah, well, how does that happen? That happens because when
Especially after Lord of the Rings, right? It's you didn't get him.
yeah, it was after Lord of the Rings, and I think after two of his X-Men
Yeah,
films.
so he's not jobbing actor.
No, he was
Yeah.
he was definitely famous when he was involved in 18. I think that happened because I was in my 20s when I made 18. And there's something really special about being in your 20s and making movies. When you're that age, you think you could do anything. So by that measure, sometimes you can.
Right.
And I like approaching Ian McKellen, like if I was starting out at in my 40s, I would be like, probably not. I'd be too embarrassed. I'd be like, why would I do something like that? But when you're in your 20s, you have this like fearlessness. And so I was pretty fearless and pretty crazy too, because a lot of people think that I worked with Sir Ian when he was in Vancouver because he shot in Vancouver so often. But
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I actually flew to Sydney, Australia,
Holy
um,
cow.
to and he laid down the audio track because he narrates 18. He laid that down at Fox Studios Australia, and that was like in February of 2004, and it's before we even shot any part of
Oh
Brother
wow.
of 18. Pardon me.
Yeah,
I get my two children mixed up,
for
Brotherhood 18.
sure. Yeah.
And but I met Ian McKellen at TIFF, I think in 2003. But I think to kind of like backdate the story a bit, I think that I kind of came into Ian McKellen's orbit because I met Alan Cumming, the great Scottish actor, at the Vancouver Film Festival, I think in the year 2000. He was shooting Josie and the Pussycats here in Vancouver at the time. And we became friends and we stayed in touch. And he shot in Vancouver quite a bit. So when he would come to Vancouver, we'd go out and hang out and go to restaurants or whatever. And I always had the idea of 18 and I wanted him involved. And he ended up playing a priest in the movie. So
Okay.
Alan sort of vouched for me with Sir Ian, and Alan was the person who actually gave me Ian McKellen's email address, and it probably took me like an hour to write it, and then I asked him to be the voice of the grandfather who leaves this audio cassette for his grandson who's 18, telling him the story about when he was lost in the woods of France during the Second World War. And Ian McKellen just wrote back, as long as I don't have to do a Canadian accent, I'm in. So he was working in Sydney, full circle, and
Yep.
so flew out there with absolutely no money, and then he wasn't getting back to me, so I had to like talk my way backstage at a play that he was doing in Sydney, and I brought a gift for him, like a T-shirt, and I gave it to him, and he said, "Okay, well, let's record it tomorrow morning." Now, if I were to do it now, I would say here, just speak into this iPhone
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
but no, we went to Fox Studios, which is where he had done Lord of the Rings, of course, and I just spent 45 minutes with him, and that was it. But it was I think that story, maybe as I look back on it, like almost 20 years later, is sort of a testament to the tenacity that I had. Well, it still have. It's just maybe a little bit more tempered or seasoned, but it is, I think, indicative of the sort of like spirit and hunger that a young filmmaker needs to have burning in the pit of his belly to just do crazy things like fly to the other side of the world with no money just to get like 3 minutes of dialogue from an A-list actor
Yeah.
just so just so your project can just so you can leverage that and your project can actually have a name star attached. And 18 is still going, and it's probably because of Ellen and Ian's involvement, and Bramwell Tovey, who wrote the score in the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, and Brendan Fletcher, like at 18 shows on Crave, like, and it's still going, and they actually just renewed the license for it. So I think having like some name actors involved always is a good thing.
And prior to 18, obviously, you just didn't fall into this going, I'm going to make a movie, and 18 it is. What got you started when you were, be it younger, going to movies when you were really young, or catching that bug when you're in your teens? What got you into that mode, as opposed to, well, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a lawyer, or...
Oh, my mom would be so happy if I wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer, or if I went to university. But when I was a kid, I think my story is probably not too different than a lot of Gen Xers, in the sense that as a child of the 1980s, it was a great time for movies, especially popcorn movies. And so you have things like Star Wars, or Indiana Jones, or Dark Crystal, or Labyrinth, Return to Oz, Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. These are the movies that just blew my mind when I was a kid, and I watched them again and again and again, and I just loved them. And so I was always in acting when I was in elementary school. And I do remember when the camcorder first came out, and our school got one in 1984 or 85.
Oh,
they
nice.
they let me bring it home, and I would just recorded my family with it. I was put in like a gifted / enrichment program. I don't know what you would call it now, but I was put in that, and that was really good, because I got to work with a video camera a lot. And then when I was in junior high school, I did all like the plays, and did Rebel Without a Cause, and musicals, West Side Story, Hair. I acted in those. My high school did have a film program, but I didn't really get involved in that. I was more interested in doing, like, I played John Proctor in The Crucible, and all this stuff was very, we did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It was all very formative and exciting. And it was my high school drama teacher that recommended that I go to Studio 58.
Okay.
I let him to college, so he helped me with my audition, and then I got in. So by then I was 19 or 20, and then 23 when I graduated, like two of like 15 people who started. It was very rough. It was a very challenging program. But by the time I graduated, I think that's when Titanic came out, and I think I saw Titanic on opening night. So it was before Leo Mania, or before Celine Dion was striking her chest at the Oscars,
Right.
making it all seem a little bit ridiculous, good ridiculous. And I saw it at the Capitol 6 on Granville Street in Vancouver, and I just walked out of the theater after seeing Titanic, and I just said to my friend, "That's so what I want to do. That is so what I want to do." Because it was just so epic, and that James Horner score was so amazing, and the visual effects were so well crafted, and the costumes were so luxurious, and I just wanted to do that. So it was very ironic, and in a really good way, that probably about exactly 20 years later, it was in 2017 that I found myself on a film set for Brotherhood with a giant water tank filled with water, that had a war canoe capsized in it, and all these boys wearing period costumes. And Jake Manley stars in Brotherhood, and he's got a Leonardo DiCaprio-esque, if that's a word, sort of vibe to him, with his suspenders and good looks and floppy hair. And I just had this moment where I was like, wow, yeah, I if I were to look at a crystal ball in 1997, or was it 1998, when Titanic came out, and I saw that future for myself. Now, granted, Brotherhood is not Titanic.
Right.
It's like mini Titanic, mini, micro Titanic. But I think I would have been pleased looking at that crystal ball and seeing that future for myself.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, it had the movie that you've been bringing up in Jaws. We would have been tying it to the SS Indianapolis with Brotherhood here for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, just on that note, and bringing it back to Brotherhood, Mother Nature, I mean, is that something, not that you're going to tip your hand and this is what you're working on next, but do you have no issue battling Mother Nature when you were filming, or is that something you'd like to avoid maybe the next project out?
Oh no,
If you were writing it, right?
yeah, no, I would go head on into shooting on location again. It
Yep.
is very special. Nothing beats it. Like the best visual effects still don't beat being on location. Like it's very impressive, like what the Mandalorian is doing on Disney Plus.
Sure.
We've had I think it's called the volume or something, where
Yeah.
the
The
visual
screen.
effects
Yeah.
are projected in real time. And that's something I sort of wish we had on Brotherhood, but we didn't. But that doesn't beat. I don't think that trumps something as visceral as like The Revenant, where
Yeah.
the director is on location and the actors are feeling the real biting cold or the real rain splattering on their face, or the real wind is blowing through their hair. I think it's just way better for an actor, and I think it's way better for a director, and it's way better for the audience. And maybe just to bring up Star Wars again, like there's a real difference, I think, between the authenticity of the original Star Wars trilogy and sort of like the sterile feel of, say, the prequels, where they were on set with green screen, and whereas on the original trilogy, George Lucas and Irvin Kershner and crew were where were they, in Morocco
Tunisia.
or
Yeah, in Tunisia. Yeah.
Tunisia? They're in Tunisia where the cameras were melting, and
Yeah.
it just feels more real and more authentic and more just larger scope. It's kind of like a David Lean movie, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what's the difference between, say, uh, although Gone with the Wind is one of the best movies, of course, but there's a difference between the feel, I think, of Gone with the Wind, which was made in sound stages, and David Lean's
Lawrence of
Lawrence of Arabia,
Arabia. Yeah. Bridge
which
over River Kwai. Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
just feels like it has like a way bigger scope,
Yeah.
and more veracity.
Well, you can see that even with the new one, the new Star Wars Andor, where they're clearly not using the screens; they're out and about, right? And it's
Oh,
okay.
really?
Yeah, a little wider in
Yeah, I'm
presence.
not watching Andor because Christian Thielen told me to cancel Disney Plus to
Oh,
save
okay,
money. No. I'm
that's
not
very
watching
good.
Andor because I was so disappointed with the Book of Boba Fett. And what was the other one that I had to sit through? Oh, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I was just
Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yeah, that
the
came out too.
80s kid in me just died a lot, and I'm so happy that other people enjoy those series. But for me, it just feels like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. So I haven't seen Andor.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's different. There's no Jedi's, so if you're looking for that, there's no wizards in Andor. That's for sure.
To me, Star Wars ended in 1983 with Return
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
Jedi.
yeah. It ended
It
with
just
that Ewoks movie, I think. Yeah,
it was perfect.
or the one with Wilford Brimley right after.
Oh yeah, do you know what? I didn't even mind those movies,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
again, I was a kid when I saw them.
And well, so you're a Canadian filmmaker, and you've been doing it for a while, and you're obviously well ensconced in film. Where do you, in your opinion, where is Canadian film right now? Where are we at as far as I remember that, and I mean, you can still make the argument where as long as you don't release a movie the same year Cronenberg or Adam McGoyan do, you're doing okay. But now there's much more, I think, variety in Canadian film, be that Canadian film like yourself, or even if you're including somebody like Denis Villeneuve, who's Canadian, but certainly not working in a Canadian scope in any way. Where is Canadian film in your opinion, as far as matching up against not Hollywood, but against other countries and just against itself of the past?
Well, how do I answer this? Because I want to be as diplomatic as possible. Um, I don't know. Maybe this is the answer. Like the project that I'm working on right now,
Mm-hmm.
a little sad to say, is that I'm working on getting my green card,
Okay.
because for me, that just feels like the next natural step for me. I don't want to leave Vancouver. I love Vancouver and I love living here.
Right.
And I'd like to look towards the United States and hopefully get work so I could work in Vancouver. I'm not too sure what the future of Canadian film is, because we just seem to be taking a really long time to try and figure out what it is, what gets people in seats, and some of the current focus I see doesn't feel like it's about making Canadian film more sexy,
Hmm.
um, and or getting people in seats. It's sometimes I feel like we're kind of majoring in minor things. The biggest challenge with Canadian film is that I think that we've always had this attitude, to quote Field of Dreams, is build it and they will come.
Hmm.
And we build it, but people do not come. The most probably 50% of releasing a Canadian film in this country is marketing,
Yeah.
and no one will work as hard as the filmmakers to get a movie out there, or to get press releases out there, or Twitter campaigns, or Facebook or Instagram buys, or what have you. Um, I'm not super impressed with the distributors in this country, but I'm willing to be proven wrong, or have my opinion changed, and pivot just as easily and happily as I did on the set of Brotherhood when challenges came up.
Right.
But I don't think that as far as theatrical goes, I don't think that Canadian distributors give a lot of credence to theatrical. And they're also not, they don't seem to be quite aware of all the great mom and pop cinemas that are out,
Yeah.
that are in Canada, that are willing to support Canadian films. I have, like, Brotherhood is shown now in about 60 cinemas in Canada, in,
Right.
like, obviously a staggered release in between lockdowns and all that sort of stuff. But it's been completely embraced by the independent cinemas, and then embraced by film societies, or like the library society, or like a lot of people over 50 who are still interested in going to the cinema, or who, like my mom, don't know how to download a movie on
For sure.
Apple TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there is an audience out there, but we're not doing the marketing. And as long as we continue to not do the marketing in a sophisticated way, Canadian films will just keep fizzling.
Yeah.
They'll just keep fizzling.
Well, and I was going to ask you on that note. I mean, that is kind of the plan right now? At least the strategy for Brotherhood is, okay, it is streaming and it's on a few of these platforms, but then, okay, this week we're going to, in this case, it's Dawson Creek and Yorkton and
Yeah.
Iqaluit. And 2 weeks from now, it'll be somewhere else. Is that kind of
Well,
the
Brotherhood just,
rollout? Sorry?
I mean, Brotherhood keeps surprising me, even though it shouldn't, because I'm doing a lot of the work as far as like getting it out there. I always think that Brotherhood has done its journey, its theatrical
Okay.
journey, because ostensibly it's been going since winter of 2019.
Yeah.
Time has warped because of this pandemic we've come through, and definitely the rules of distribution went out the window with COVID-19, which for Brotherhood was a good thing, which I was like a sailor on a sea. I was able to navigate that. It was actually kind of like a good thing in the summer of 2020. Not a good thing, but there was, Hollywood stopped putting movies out, and so I contacted a lot of independent mom and pop cinemas and said, "Are you interested in this Canadian title?" And they were like, "Yeah, we don't have anything else. Like, we don't have
Yeah.
anything from Warner Brothers. We don't have anything from Disney or Paramount. Sure, we'll take a chance." And then, because I think Brotherhood is a good film, and it's a good Canadian film, and it attracts a lot of people, say, who are over 50, who do enjoy that feeling of yesteryear and Canadiana and all that kind of stuff. Um, it it, it just keeps going,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's easy to promote it in July because that's the anniversary of the real event.
Sure.
And then sometimes it's easier to promote it in November because of the Great War backstory, and it makes some pretty decent Remembrance Day programming. Uh,
Absolutely.
and then also independent cinemas are interested in screening Canadian titles because Telefilm Canada is doing COVID, is putting out COVID relief monies to help these cinemas recover from these horrible lockdowns. And so it behooves these cinemas to show some Canadian product.
Yeah.
But,
Absolutely.
I mean, to answer your question probably more broadly, Canadian theatrical will thrive in this country when the Canadian distributors decide it so, and are willing to invest money and infrastructure in promoting and marketing it. It
Yeah.
is easier to drop something onto Amazon Prime, and it's probably more profitable to do that. But releasing something in theaters gives the title a certain kind of prestige,
Yeah.
and it also creates audience engagement, especially if I'm going and I'm doing Q&As and introducing the picture and glad handing and autographing posters. But it drives people who can't come to the theater that night to the streaming, which the profit for that would go to the distributor after all their expenses. Although I'm not sure what the expenses are. When I look at my own credit card, I'm not sure what their expenses are. So still trying to be diplomatic.
No,
But yeah.
I hear you. Well, no, and it's exactly that. And unless you are a true mom and pop store, some of in some of the cases, especially in the States, they're paying to get the movie, and then they got to keep the movie for so long because of the contract, and they're not making the money, even though the studio sure as hell is. I think Kevin Smith may have it right, where he's just walking around with it in his pocket, and he'll just four-wall every screen he walks into. And like you say, he does all the Q&As and can charge more, and away you go, right?
I've been quoted saying this before, so I don't want to repeat myself, but it's worth mentioning, is that with Brotherhood, I sort of see myself as the fisherman who brings his fish directly to the restaurant.
Yeah.
I'm not cutting out the middleman, because my distributor obviously has to send the DCP or the digital file, and they have to do the booking, and they need to be respected in that capacity as the de facto owners of the picture, of course.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would never go around my distributor in that capacity, but I guess I am kind of like, oh, do you want to buy my fish? And people say, yeah, kid, I'll buy your fish. And then customers say, we really like that kid's fish.
Yeah. Well, you just got to start seeing if people are buying it down in California now, right?
Right.
I noticed we are. I'm getting the 2-minute warning here. I was just going to ask you, if you don't mind, if you are kind of making it public, what are you up to next, or what are you doing now when you're not promoting Brotherhood, as far as either lining up financing for the next thing, or writing the next thing, or planning on shooting whenever you're going to plan on shooting next?
Yeah, so there's the green card that I mentioned that I'm working on, that I'm it's a big.
And just to be clear, that's not a project. That's your actual green card to work in the States.
I'm not making a movie called Green Card.
Yeah.
Although there was a Gérard Depardieu.
I think there was.
Andy McDowell in the 90s.
Yeah.
That was directed by, I think, Norman Jewison, Canadian. But there are a couple projects that I'm circling, and one of them is another historical picture.
Great.
The World War II story. However, I don't know if I could. It's a big film. It's bigger than Brotherhood. So there's that I'm circling. The most immediate thing that I'm working on is that there's this very beloved illustrator and author, who's sort of like Canada's Beatrix Potter meets J.K. Rowling. And I met him a while ago, and I'm very interested in making his storybooks into a limited series, as an animated limited series. Nice. So that's what I'm working on right now. I can't give you his name yet because we haven't sealed the deal yet, but I'm hoping that happens soon.
Oh, very good. On that note, let's just call that a day before we get cut off at a sentence or something. But thank you, Richard, for your time. And obviously, I'll get this up before we screen here in Dawson Creek Brotherhood, November 9th, this Wednesday.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. I really love the questions. They were really refreshing.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll be in touch beyond just this.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Take care. Have a great one.